Yes, apparently we are live on In Pit Lane, the Victory Lap, our Google Hangout following In Pit Lane. If you're watching In Pit Lane in Melbourne, you're probably as confused as I am. For some reason, they showed the second segment twice and didn't show the first segment at all, which had all sorts of wonderful things, including World Endurance Championship, Formula One, NASCAR, all the usual things. News about Sandown's imminent closure. It was a wonderful segment one. It was probably one of the finest segment ones I think we've ever done. I think Michael Laminato, who was there involved, you'd certainly agree with me on that point, wouldn't you, Michael? It was an astonishing segment one. It's a great tragedy for broadcasting that the people of Australia haven't got the chance to see it.
Oh, look, I was in the studio when you recorded it, and there was just awe from everyone in there after that segment. We'll never reach those levels again, and it's a terrible shame that we'll never see it until I presume it's uploaded onto the internet, and then everyone will know that maybe it wasn't quite what that was. But I was impressed with it nonetheless.
Yes, well, I was very impressed. I think everybody who was there will sort of remember it fondly for many years to come. Unfortunately, I mean it's the same problem because of the ridiculous sort of copyright laws, around the world. We can't put it on. I mean, it'd be easy to say, okay, look, as soon as we finish this, I'll just whack it up online and there. But the moment we pop it up on the YouTube channel, NASCAR and Bernie and just about everybody involved will jump up and down and get very, very upset because certainly it's a grey area. It's really hard in terms of what is fair dealing because the fair dealing regulations are so old. They don't take into account. They don't take into account international broadcast at all. I mean, if it was just in Australia, you might get away with it, but the fact that people can watch it all around the world, and certainly what we get from NASCAR comes very specifically with the thing that it is not to be used online. It's for terrestrial broadcast only within our broadcast footprint. So so we can't sort of show that. Also, our very good friends, our sponsors at Dyno Dynamics. Our apologies to them as well because it doesn't look like one. I don't think they're. Don't know whether their billboard went to air. I didn't see because I wasn't tuned in at that time. I was actually watching Rick Stein's trip to India and learning how to cook some lovely curries. And I'm desperate to. The problem with watching cooking shows is as soon as you sit there watching them, despite the fact that I've had quite a good meal tonight and a terrific lunch, I'm just sitting there going, "Oh, gee, I wouldn't mind a curry right now." Yeah. Anyway, I suppose we should talk a bit about matters Formula One.
Yes. Can we keep talking about cooking?
Okay, cooking. Yes. Well, I saw some wonderful stuff. I've never had a real lust to go to India, but it has made me sort of I'd certainly like to go to Sri Lanka. I've said it lots of times I'd like to go to Sri Lanka, and because I love my curries, and I think it would be a fabulous trip, But anyway, that's probably further down the track. That's probably the next sort of television extravaganza, the Brett Ramsey In Pit Lane cooking show, and Channel 31 could show that in the wrong order as well. So, I mean, the problem is, once upon a time, we did way before you got involved. We actually deliberately showed a program backwards. To see what the reaction would be. We started with the end credits and finished off with the opening title, and it really freaked people out. And I suppose there's probably some of the more experienced viewers are probably going to be sitting there going, "Oh God, they're doing that gag again." That was older when they did it 10 years ago.
I'd like to think there are some people who are writing that down in a notebook somewhere, joining some dots from all the times you've done it and waiting for the next date.
The scary thing is there are people like that. There are people out there who know and remember far more about the program than I ever will. I mean, they'll tell you what year people were on and who I've had on, and people just say, "Oh, I don't think they've been on." Yes, of course, remember that night? It's like, no. But I think that's when you do so many of them, they sort of all drift in together because it doesn't seem like 18 years to me. It really doesn't. And I just sort of forget about it. Once I've done the first, once I've done it, I sort of try and forget about it. The annoying thing about tonight is I've now got to, it now means something I've got to do tomorrow in ringing Channel 31 and saying, guys, what the fuck happened? But yeah, so I suppose that's coming up. Yeah, so in news, Fernando Alonso, 50 million they're saying for McLaren Honda. Good,
Yeah,
good
some.
investment.
Well, I mean, arguably not because he didn't have anywhere else to go, really, did he? Once Ferrari had said, "Oh, we've had enough, we're going to part ways." Red Bull said, "We're hiring Verstappen." Mercedes said, "Oh no, we've got Rosberg and Hamilton." It's surprising they're paying him so much, considering it was either that or not race again. So, yeah, I mean, it's the highest amount of money paid to a driver in Formula One. It puts him in the top three greatest salaries of any athlete in the world at the moment, and it'll put him in the top 10 of that, including sponsorship as well. So it's a huge amount of money. But I guess Honda, who's coming into the sport next year, of course, as the engine supplier, just really, really wanted him very, very badly because they've paid a lot of money for him.
The question is, I suppose, now everyone's asking what the hell happens with Jenson Button. As we said in the report tonight that nobody actually saw, he proved over the weekend yet again that he's still got what it takes. I mean, he's not out of he's not hopelessly uncompetitive. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so, I mean, but which way do they go? Do they sort of say, well, we want a young guy with him? Will we want to keep Magnussen? Or do they say, like, no, we'll have two experienced hands and, we've got two really top drivers, and two world champions?
Well, that's the thing. It's a weird situation, actually. I can't remember the last time we've been in it. I guess the closest thing I can think of is Kimi Raikkonen not going to Red Bull, but of course he ended up at Ferrari, so it wasn't an issue. But we've got a situation in which a world championship driver is going to be booted out by a team to be replaced by a rookie, and he's definitely got more years ahead of him. The word is at the moment that although Honda would have liked Button, because of course they worked together in the mid and late 2000s, culminating in that fantastic Earth Dreams car, which we all remember so fondly. They want to be able to work with him. They know how each other works. But considering the amount of money that McLaren threw at Alonso, ironically, it was a money is no object deal. Money's very much an object now, and when you've got Magnussen, who's been here for a year, Button, who's been here for 15, commands a world title, you can guess which one's going to be cheaper. So it sounds like they might end up with Magnussen. But the outpouring of support for Jenson Button this week, since we've sort of seen this deal get closer, has been enormous. I think it really does hammer home that idea that we've got so many drivers who are paying on the grid. Nothing against Magnussen, who's a great rookie. He's had a solid rookie season. We've got to remember it was his first ever year. But to boot out a world champion driver it's a bit of a weird situation that we find ourselves in.
I think that's part of the problem with Formula One at the moment. I mean, we've got some drivers in there who perhaps shouldn't be in there simply because of the amount of money that they're bringing in, and some drivers who should be who are going. Certainly, the rumor going around, there's still a very strong rumor saying that he's already signed for Toyota for next year, possibly to replace Nicolas Lapierre. So once again, the Formula One, the feeder category for World Endurance Championships.
Turning into that, yeah. And we saw Mark Webber on Twitter because Jenson Button posted something about this deal, and Mark Webber said, "Just hurry up and sign that contract already." I don't know if he actually knows anything, but I think he's certainly keen to hammer home that point that yes, WEC is a great place to be.
Yeah, well, certainly Mark is enjoying it. I mean, all the feedback and everything he said, like in interviews, and that is that he's enjoying the more relaxed atmosphere. He's enjoying the technology. He's enjoying the longer races and that team camaraderie. Is really keeping him interested. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's interesting to say that because the last thing Jenson Button sort of said on the issue in the last weekend was that it's not about the money, which is obviously hinting towards that idea that McLaren's looking for a money decision. He just wants to feel wanted by a team, and I think the WEC is certainly fostering that kind of environment more than Formula One, certainly more than Ron Dennis is. So yeah, there's definitely something to be made there.
well, someone said just recently that Ron Dennis, he's a new Ron Dennis. They were saying that he's a warmer, caring, sharing, nicer Ron Dennis than he was when he first came in, and that he's full of love and compassion and gives hugs and
I don't know about that.
very sweet.
I read recently, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I feel like he said something recently to the effect of drivers are just another car part. So I don't know how true that is, but yeah.
Well, that's like the old sort of a corruption of the old Alfred Hitchcock line. Actors are just another prop. Trent Price has joined us from E-Racing Magazine.
Yeah.
Trent, welcome to you. What's your take on the Fernando Alonso $50 million deal? Is good investment by Honda?
Oh, yeah, pretty good. Bargain. I would have thought, given what he's been on the last couple of years.
Grand sale, grand sale, grand sale.
I mean, when you think about it, I mean, they've been preparing for this since forever, really. I mean, Honda don't do anything by halves, even when they're not involved in Formula One or any category in the sport. They're actually building the engines for Formula One just to keep their hand in, just in case, And a lot of these engines are actually being built, sent to a factory that no one knows about, and then weighed before they go in, tested, then they're crushed, then they're weighed before they go out, so no one's actually stolen any of these parts as well. So they're serious, they're really, really serious mob. And, $50 million is almost, that's by the by. You would expect them to spend that much. The investment they're putting in when they're not even involved in the sport.
Yeah, well, there's also supposed to be that sort of skunk works operation that there was a whole LMP1 car supposedly sitting around that people claimed to have seen, and they said that it was built for just that reason. We wanted to build it to see what it would look like and to do a bit of testing with it, and if we went in that direction, we would go in that direction. But they're obviously they're not doing things by halves.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. And I had a friend who actually used to work there underneath Ron Tornak when they were building the Rontac. It was always said, you go in, you don't look to the left, you don't look to the right, you don't look over the line, see what's going on. But of course, you're going to look. And he saw what was going on. So yeah.
Sounds like the instructions that I give people when they come and visit me at home. So. But yeah, so that's going on. Coming up, we had on the show, as people would have seen twice, Dale Wood sort of making 2 appearances on the program. V8 Supercars coming up this week at Phillip Island. A lot of conjecture about Ford going in. Now, I've already said I think this is actually a rare piece of good marketing by Ford. Ford are, they're not giving away anything. They've given all the indications they're going to pull out. They've got people running online polls and surveys and petitions saying, please, Ford, don't go. I don't think they've got any intention of going anywhere at all. They're not going to pay as much as they used to in the old days, but you would think that with a brand new so-called sporting car in the Mustang, coming around the corner, it would be crazy for them to have run the shopping trolley Falcon for all these years and then suddenly turn around when they do get a car that has some sort of pretensions of being a performance car to turn around and say, oh no, okay, we're not going to race it. So I think that I'm pretty sure Ford are going to be there, and it seems to be V8 Supercars have basically said now that the rules are going to be changed to allow the 2-door cars to come in, although they said they were going to specifically formulate the regulations to ensure that cars like the Mercedes SLS and any basically purebred GT car, Lamborghini, Ferrari, etc., couldn't get in. So I'm not sure how they're going to work that, but yeah. So what do you guys think? I mean, do you think that Ford are going to go anywhere, or they hang around?
It depends on their budget. I mean, well, not the budget, it's where the budget's coming from. Is it coming from Detroit or is it coming from Australia? I mean, as it is, I think if you've got a car industry in decline or basically gone, you can't be seen to be spending money or a marketing budget on going racing. That's just pure and simple fact. If it's coming from the US, well, that's another story again. But there was a big, when they had their own recession, there was a big talk about, look, we can't be seen to be promoting motorsport or anything like that, because effectively it is a marketing budget when people are losing jobs. So, look, it's going to be someone's decision behind a desk whether it goes ahead or not. But it seems odd that, to be honest, I find these polls a bit absurd, and I'll probably get smacked over the head for even saying that. When people are saying, "Oh no, don't go," when you've got factories closing down in Geelong. It's like, what's more important, going racing or or jobs? I love motorsport. We're in motorsport. That's my business. But at the end of the day, if you haven't got that in place, you can't go racing. So yeah.
I believe, from what I was told, somebody who should know, who must remain nameless, basically at Sandown on the weekend, said that the money and the decision was coming direct from Detroit. And it was interesting. There's a lot of Australian journalists and people over at SEMA in Las Vegas this week, and Ford have been very, very have had a very high profile there. They've been lots of entertaining for the Australian journalists, and while they're not saying they're sort of saying racing is in our DNA. Racing is very important. We are a company that wants to go racing, but we haven't made a decision on Australia yet. But it would seem that if they're going to sort of spruik their racing policy and saying this is a car that we want to see on the track, and this is a car that is being made to race on the great racetracks of the world, that they suddenly turn around and say, no, we're not going to do V8 Supercars, unless of course V8 Supercars shoot themselves in the foot so badly that they turn around and say, yes, we're going to race it, but we're going to do it in the Australian GT Championship, and that would be.
Somehow I don't think they would do that, but yeah, I don't know. Wouldn't it be great to see someone like James Moffat in a Mustang?
Well, yeah, that would be the ideal thing in terms of sort of getting people involved. But I think he's pretty comfortable in it Nissan at the moment. But once again, I mean, they've all got problems in terms of we don't know who's replacing Norton at this stage at Nissan. There's still there's still talks that Jack Daniels may pull out of Nissan as well. We've lost Lockwood have gone from BJR, although apparently they're going to make an announcement this weekend, might even be tomorrow, that they're going to make an announcement of a new major sponsor for next year. So they look like they're sort of set. But I think it's interesting, all these sort of really big companies, major companies, pulling out in the same year that V8 Supercars are wandering off to pay TV, and despite what James Warburton said in his interview with Auto Action, which I don't know whether you guys have read it, but I mean, you opened the pages and you could smell the arrogance. I mean, it was 12 hour. What's the 12 hour? I mean, we've spoken of the 12 hour. We shall mention it no more. Thank you very much.
I need that. Yeah.
So yeah.
The pay is really interesting, I think, because sponsorship is so critical. And I was speaking to someone the other day, and it's really interesting. The V8 Supercars does such a great job of making it seem like it's extremely healthy. I mean, you don't see any blank cars, you don't see any teams overtly sort of suffering when they're on the track. So I do wonder, I mean, if you've got sort of a downturn of viewers, you've got that pay TV effect as well, if those questions are going to be able to be raised if you don't have many people going, well, they've got all these stickers on the car, but there's no money coming into the team at the same time. So I wonder if that's all that's going to add up in the next couple of years, and suddenly you're going to find yourself in some real problems.
Yeah, so we've got some the Q&A machine is open. We've got some questions from Frosty again. Same question for Michael. Christian Horner's comments about dropping the V6 and going back to the V8s. What do you think about that? And Sauber has come out saying that Formula One is actually trying to get rid of these smaller teams. First of all, I'd be more than happy if they went back to the V8s. Obviously, Mercedes, for one, have said that they would be out in a flash, and I don't know how happy Honda would be if something like that happened. But the thing about Formula One is, is it a manufacturer's championship? I mean, to me, it's first and foremost, it should be a driver's championship, and a constructors championship, and and if Mercedes want to build a constructor Formula One car, that's fine. But you know, if you look at when the sort of the racing was the best, and when we had lots of different teams, it was when people would go out and knock on the door at Cosworth and say, can give us half a dozen of those, and they can go racing, and the racing was all, to me, the racing is all that matters. If we're going to have a manufacturers championship, we used to have one. What was in a previous incarnation, what is now the World Endurance Championship was the World Manufacturers Championship. If you want to have all of this technology, as we do in the WEC, make the Manufacturers Championship, drag them to Le Mans and those sort of events where they can test out over 24 hours in cars that are pseudo road cars, and just concentrate on making Formula One a category for the best drivers and the best designers in terms of cars and engines, and make it relatively affordable. I mean, it's never going to be cheap, but right now, those engines are so incredibly, technically advanced. There's no way of a Zytec or Cosworth or any of those people, even getting a sniff of that. If you're not a Mercedes or a Honda or a Ferrari, dare I say, you're not going to get in at all.
I think it's an interesting sort of series of things to raise. It's a question Formula One definitely has to sort of accept. I think one of the issues it sort of raises is that in a climate where there's so little money to go around, it almost needs to rely on big manufacturers to come in and keep the sport turning over. I mean, because the Formula One glamour is partly to do with the idea that you have all the money floating around, you have the big manufacturers spending big money. You don't need all of the teams to be on, all competing for the win. While you do need some equality, you don't need them to all be up the front. So I think if you were to drive the sport towards smaller teams, you get more small teams that aren't really pushing development forward in the same way we see big spenders like Red Bull and Mercedes going forward, and they want to be involved because they can take the glamour of saying, Mercedes this year, you've already seen the advertisements pushing hard saying, we've won the world championship, we've beaten all these people, and that becomes devalued if instead of, the big spenders you get like, whoever, your Caterhams and your Marushas, who of course aren't on the grid anymore. Look back at Frosty Gans-Stobant's question, the V8 thing. I don't know that that's going to happen, mostly because, as you said, Brett, Mercedes already said they're going to go. Renault, when they were moving from V8s to V6s, said if you don't implement V6s, we're going to go. Honda will go. I can't imagine a championship powered by Ferrari. As much as I'm sure some elements of Formula One would love that, I don't know that's what's going to happen. And certainly, it has been a major issue for the small teams because these new engines are so expensive, and they contribute to the folding of Caterham and Marussia. But I think there are ways you can make the engines cheaper without having to go back and sort of abandon technological push. Even if we don't need sort of car relevance, to be the pinnacle of motorsport, it still has to have some relevance to motorsport technology. And keeping V8s for 100 years is not gonna give it that relevance.
True, you're into the Formula E and all that sort of thing. With that, is it important to you that it stays, it has that technological relevance? Like I said, to me, I like that sort of stuff. It's theoretically, it's all well and good, but I just want to see great racing from talented drivers. I really don't care what's powering the cars.
Yeah, but I guess that's always been the aspect of Formula One, but I think they've actually strayed from that technological zenith point that they would like to promote themselves with. I guess getting back to Frosty's point, Horner's comment about V8s, that's just political manoeuvring, and when you think about it, the V8s is actually a relatively recent phenomenon. The people who don't mind the new engines now like the Cosworths, and they like the turbo era. The scream of the V8s and the V10s was still actually a fairly recent thing. So it's only the people who are only around for that era are the ones who are complaining about it now. I guess what they're missing, though, in terms of, one, the cost of the engines, and we've just said that Audi doesn't want to get into Formula One because their entire motorsport program is about a third of the budget that Mercedes is spending. So what does that tell you? Well, they're more technically advanced than World Endurance Championship, and they're spending it on less money. in Shanghai, we had two drivers in Porsche and Toyota whose average qualifying time was to a thousandth of a second. There was a Porsche only got the pole just because they got there first.
Yeah.
And this is a four-cylinder hybrid versus a V8 hybrid, and it's bloody close. And you know that's why the manufacturers are getting in, because there's a variety, they can experiment. If Formula One was offering that up, I think you'd see actually costs would actually drop, because if you have more manufacturers involved, and as a result they'd be competing for prices, and then it'd be a buyer's market, possibly.
Yeah, I mean that was always the theory. I always liked, and it was a very simple formula the late Colin Chapman came up, which effectively was a fuel amount and a fuel flow formula, which basically said you will get X amount of fuel and it will flow at this particular maximum set rate. How you produce that power is totally up to you. So if you can make a 6-litre V8 run on that particular power, and make it work, if you can make a 1.3-litre 4-cylinder engine, turbocharged engine run on that and get the same sort of power out of it, whatever you do with it, a road, it doesn't matter. Whatever the engine is, it runs on that amount of fuel at that particular flow rate. Make the best use of it. Apart from that, there are no rules.
Yeah, Keith Duckworth was a very smart man, and everyone seems to have forgotten that. He could have made it very simple for everyone.
Yes, well, that's...
Yeah, it's not a disappointment that even just the engine architecture, we could have at least said, you know, you need to have this size an engine and let people build to what they want, as opposed to being so prescriptive. That's something maybe that they should look at, yeah.
Well, I think it was, I think Ferrari had a lot of say in that. I mean, I think the original idea was that they were going to go to a 4-cylinder layout, and Ferrari said there is absolutely no way we're building a 4-cylinder, which is silly, because I mean it has been done in the past, but yeah, I think
they said they weren't ever going to drop a V12 either, and they did that. So.
Well, that's why I think, I mean, everyone says, oh, you know, if they go back to the V8s, you know, like Ferrari will pull out and all this. Ferrari need, I think Ferrari sort of need Formula One, despite the fact that they keep saying Formula One needs Ferrari more than Ferrari needs Formula One. I don't think that's true, because really, I mean, the whole magic of Ferrari comes from that, you know, they are Ferrari. They are so, you know, and they do race Formula. And they do race in Formula One. If they didn't, yeah, I mean, I don't think they would have the same attraction to a lot of people anymore.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. That needs to be recognised. I feel like, I don't know if it's a combination of the way that FIA and Formula One management have done their deals, but I think it's unfair to say, to just cater exclusively to Ferrari when, yeah, they need Formula One as much as Formula One needs it. And I think, you know, with the exception of maybe going off and dominating the WEC, if they could do that, there's not really anywhere else Ferrari's going to go and spend its enormous amount of resources. I mean, they just built a factory for Formula One, a brand new one. I don't think they're going to, you know, sort of, you know, pick up all of a sudden and say, oh, we're done here because we don't like what you're doing. They're going to stick around. And that probably needs to be catered towards.
Yep. Coming up this weekend, there is a Grand Prix this weekend. It's not a Formula One Grand Prix, but it's a Formula 3 Grand Prix in Macau, and it's an incredible lineup of drivers and cars. And I suppose the guy with the big target painted on the back of his head right now is going to be one Mr. Max Verstappen, because he's the one who's getting the push into Formula One, and pretty much everyone else turning up to Macau is going to want to prove to the world that, hang on, we're every bit as good, if not better, than he is. So we haven't heard much about Macau. I mean, Michael and I were talking before we went on air that about trying to find live streams and all. I've contacted the Macau Grand Prix. They haven't got back to me at this stage. Trent, have you heard anything about live streaming or anything where you might see it? It's not got any coverage at all?
Yeah, not sure as yet. I actually got to look into it myself because I've just been busy all day up at Winton, but I'll have a look at that. I know it's quite possible that the mob who do the Formula Masters wrap-ups might be doing it. They do a pretty good job, but yeah, I have to have a look and let you guys know. But I'm sure there'll be something. There definitely would be something. If you know, probably one of the the black market stream. I'm sure you'd be able to find something.
Yeah, I think that was where I sort of found it. I think I found it last year. It was on. So yeah, I mean, you will be able to get it on one of those sort of illegal streams, but usually then the quality isn't brilliant, and you're interrupted by ads for Viagra and casinos and all sorts of things. And I don't need a casino, so I think that. Yeah, I think that it'll be a great meeting coming up. They always have a live. There is always a live stream of the audio commentary, which is great to listen to in itself because it's sort of done in 3 languages. It's done, so it's done in Portuguese, it's done in Mandarin, I think probably Cantonese, and it's also done in English. They might even throw in some Mandarin as well, so it might be done in four languages, sort of concurrently. But it's great to listen to, but. It is a great event. We're really hoping to get back there this year. We went a few years ago, and it's probably the most fun we've had at a race outside of Le Mans, which is just a special thing in itself. But it was the most bizarre race meeting that I think I've ever been to, and it is one that you should put on your bucket list. If you haven't been, you've got to try and get there at some stage because. And it's a bit like Bathurst. It's one of those tracks, until you get there and you actually have a look at it, you just don't realise how steep and how narrow it is. And you think, how do they get race cars around this damn thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so good that even the Chinese and Japanese promoters of the new Formula 4 category have thrown out the possibility of having a World Series event there for that category. So whether Australia gets involved in that, I guess is their choice as well, but there's a very good opportunity there for a lot of drivers to show off their wares. Obviously it may not rival the Macau Grand Prix, but it's such a good venue that you wouldn't want to miss that.
I suppose the worry for the Macau Grand Prix organisers is the state of Formula 3 around the world. I mean, the Euro F3 series is still very strong, and it's put on some great racing this year. That's where the majority of the field is coming from. With sort of Ocon, Verstappen, Tom Blomqvist, all of those sort of people. But you've got a couple of people coming from the Japanese series, but that's not what it was. We know the British Formula 3 series is an absolute shadow of its former self. So I suppose they've got to take a look at whether sort of long term, if they could get that sort of Formula 4 World Series sort of final, whether that's something that they'd look at. It's going to be a serious cut down in sort of in the speed of the thing. But I mean, if they could get like the best young drivers in the world on that track, and they were all sort of supported by their national bodies and plenty of good money and sponsorship, whether long term they might turn around and say, well, we might push Formula 3 aside.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, Michael and I actually were talking the other day about the amount of money that China's going to be investing in sport, and obviously a huge chunk of that's going to go towards motorsport. So I'm sure that's going to filter down to Macau. So look, it'll happen, and it won't be on a small scale. And it's whether or not we decide to jump on that. There's a very unique opportunity right on the horizon, especially for Australia and a lot of young drivers here. I think we just got to grab it with both hands and not worry about some of the domestic sort of squabbles that are going on.
I think the other thing is,
considering that, I mean, the amount of money China says they're going to spend on their sports budget, I don't know why they've already all of a sudden said, yes, sport is what we want to do, but that's what they've said. It's in the hundreds of billions of dollars over a certain number of years, which is a staggering amount of money. That's Alonso-esque if you were to upscale that to a country. And it would be perfect, wouldn't it? I mean, for Australia, for motorsport in particular, if we can push them in that direction to say, suddenly we have this regional force. Europe's so far away, and Europe has all the history and that, but to have this regional superpower of motorsport funded by China, that would be, I mean, it is an incredible opportunity and something that we really should be looking at. It can be centered on Macau. I mean, that can be more than Singapore outside of the world of Formula 1, like the Monaco, that central element of what could be this Asian motorsport.
The funny thing is, it's sort of going back to the future. I mean, sort of, I'm old enough to remember that, the reason I always wanted to go to Macau is when I grew up, you know, like as a kid, and I was getting my early issues of Racing Car News and those sorts of magazines, is every year there would be big coverage of the Macau Grand Prix and also the old Singapore Grand Prix, Malaysia Grand Prix. You know, this was all in the days well before Formula One, when it was absolutely full of Australians. You know, Kevin Bartlett and Gary Cooper and John McCormick and all of those sorts of people would race regularly in Asia, and there was a lot more sort of, you know, interest in racing in Asia back then. And then we're sort of, when we went to Formula 5000, the focus changed completely. I mean, because obviously they didn't go to 5000s. They 5000s at Macau, that'd be fascinating. But I mean, it sort of disappeared for a while. It would be good to go back there. I mean, we've been saying for years, trying to push up the idea of having a closer relationship between Asian motorsport and Australian motorsport. I mean, that's one of the things we were pushing. One of the reasons we were invited to Inner Mongolia, to Ordos. I mean, because they said, you know, we want Australians to know that this series, this Audi R8 LMS series, is running around Asia, and it's a great opportunity for your guys to come over at a price they can afford. But we've just been so Eurocentric over the years, and this would be a really good opportunity now to say, okay, well, we're going to have sort of at the end of the year when everybody's had their Formula 4 series, because, you know, if they're not going to, you know, make it international, I mean, then really what's the point of it?
And that's the thing too, is that China is effectively Volkswagen's biggest market. And if you think about bless you, and think about the drivers that are getting involved in an Audi. I mean, if you do any kind of feeder series with a Volkswagen engine, they're going to be looking at you, and whether or not that's like a Lamborghini test drive in Asia or something like that, if you land one of those drives, you're getting paid. You know, you're a young driver and you are getting paid, not paying to have a drive. And if you do a good job there, then they might look at you for an LMP1 program with Audi. You know, there are so many streams through these car manufacturers, through Asia, that no one's really woken up yet. You can actually have a career as opposed to pretending and then just getting as many sponsors as you can and just laying out money and then blowing your cash by going to Europe. You know, it's mind-boggling that it's taking this long for us to realise.
You know, so many of like young Australian drivers, you know, even if they're not racing in Asia at the moment, are making a good living for themselves, going over and doing driver training. People like, you know, Jake Foraker and Elliot Barber and all those guys who are going over and training people in Vietnam and China and Malaysia and all those. You know, you keep seeing on their Facebook postings, you know, they're travelling all across Asia. They're having a, you know, what a great job that is, going all across Asia, driving at great circuits, driving with terrific cars, and it's great, and particularly with the rise of GT racing. And one other thing coming up this weekend at Macau is the round of the Asian GT Championship, and the entry for that is just fantastic.
Yeah, bursting.
Yeah, well, once again, how the hell they get them round? Particularly that hairpin. I mean, I shudder to think. Someone was saying, because they're also saying that this may well be the last year that the World Touring Car Championship will be there. Whether that's true or not, but I certainly wouldn't be too upset. When we went, I mean, the World Touring Car Championship was probably the least attractive thing on the card. I mean, there was lots of interest in the local guys in their sort of improved production type cars, their Integra type cars, all that sort of thing. They were very popular. We had Formula BMW at the time, and Daniel Ricciardo was racing that's when we were over there, because we caught up with him. And yeah, the World Touring Car Championship came on, and pretty much everyone went. That was the time everyone went and had, you know, something to drink and perhaps something to eat and all the rest of it, because they weren't particularly interested in that. So, you know, I think that the word going around is they might actually go with this new touring TC3 series that is being set up, because that seems to be fairly getting a pretty big push around Asia, simply because of the fact that it's going to cost them a hell of a lot less, and the cars are going to look pretty much the same and probably go as fast, if not even faster. So
yeah, I mean, yeah, you've got to. I mean, it reminds me a lot of the Scandinavian Touring Car Championship, how they had their own sort of little bespoke car, that was very affordable to run. And I think that model, I think that's what they sort of used a bit on the car of the future here for V8 Supercars. But it's funny how you mentioned that in Macau, how everyone just sort of went off and had their lunch when the World Touring Cars were on. I was only lamenting that fact with a friend the other day at Sandown. I was like, you'd probably have to go back to the 1980s to find a time where an open wheeler category was the premier category in Australia.
Yeah, well, that was if you go back and have a look at some of the old photos, go to AutoPix or something, and have a look at photos from the Tasman series and from Formula 5000. Have a look at some of them, coming through Dandenong Road and having a look at the size of the crowd in the background. I mean, that place was absolutely packed to capacity. Speaking of Sandown, as we once again, that didn't go to air tonight, but we have put it on on the Facebook page. The future of Sandown is looking very uncertain at the moment. Wade Calderwood, who's the outgoing general manager there, he's leaving the position at the end of this week after the Sandown Classic. I mean, they've had an interesting week. They've had historics last week. They've got the Sandown Classic, the big horse race, coming up this weekend, and today to celebrate, they had a fire. So yeah, so that was fun. I suppose it raises the question now. They've got at least another 5 years to go. So they can't they will have to, you would imagine, rebuild. You wouldn't think they'd just sort of, unless it was, a fire.
I think it was a small fire. I think it wasn't it just somewhere in the hospitality section or something? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think someone's probably left a cigar butt or something in from over the weekend, or
probably Peter Jansen or someone. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was fabulous on the weekend. I mean, the Formula 5000s. And I suppose everyone says, well, people in Australia will never watch open wheelers. Well, they certainly used to, and they watched Formula 5000s, and they stopped watching open wheelers when the Formula 5000s went away, because, what replaced them with the Formula Pacific, Formula Atlantic cars, people went and had a look at them and went, no, God, they're boring. I mean, after the fire and the thunder and the unpredictability of the Formula 5000, you came to these very sophisticated, lovely little racing cars that were as quick, if not in some cases quicker, but they were just, after the 5000, they were just boring.
Mm-hmm.
So
pretty little cars though. Yeah.
Oh yeah, they were great. They were great looking cars. There was no shortage of money either. I mean, because they had the Panasonic series. And you had all the top drivers and live television with the Atlantic Pacific cars, and of course Bob out at Calder Park for the Australian Grand Prix. We had all the so many of the Formula One guys coming across, but no, people just really were never sort of interested to the same extent as they were with the 5000s, and I don't know whether we can ever go back to that era again. But I think if you could get sort of 20. If you could get 20 sort of 5 or 6 litre V8 open wheelers running around, I still reckon that they'd get a crowd.
Yeah. Plus, I think also it's ironic that when they brought the World Endurance Championship to Sandown, that's when they changed the track for that year, and it was really boring. You didn't have that nice, quick flowing corner onto the straight, and it's bit dinky, a bit Mickey Mouse after that.
Yeah, and certainly if you have a look at the old days, I mean, it was a lot more. It was pretty much an oval when you looked at it in those days. I mean, you had sort of, you had the bit of a kink up the back straight. It was like an oval with a bit of a wiggle over the hill, and that was it. And the cars were fearsomely fast going through, but it was also incredibly dangerous too, because you had no runoff area, and we saw on the weekend with the crash with Paul Zasra just how much the safety has been improved. Because a few years ago, I mean, Paul would be in hospital. Paul would be in hospital at least now with a crash like that, compared with what happened on the weekend. But anyway, I suppose we better get ready to wrap this up. Trent, what's coming up in? You said you were out at Winton today. What were you up to?
We just had like a drive day with some guys. It was nice and hot. Car was overheating, so yeah, just only got home about an hour or so ago before.
And remind us once again what car you were driving.
Yeah, it's a British car.
Surprise! 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 Okay. When is the Formula E round in Malaysia?
That's next weekend. This weekend we got WEC Bahrain as well as everything else.
Yes, well, at least we because we miracle of miracles that I've done enough whinging and moaning that we finally did get access to some news footage from, which once again didn't go to air tonight. We had some lovely news footage from Shanghai, but I imagine we'll have on next Wednesday night's show, providing Channel 31 play it in the right order. But we will have highlights from Bahrain. And as well as the final round of NASCAR and the V8 Supercars down at Phillip Island. And also, as I mentioned, I think late in the show last night, we'll also have tickets to Island Magic to give away and a night's accommodation at the Ramada Resort at Phillip Island for one lucky in-pit lane viewer. So that's coming up next week on the program. That's 10 o'clock on Channel 31. And Island Magic's looking huge this year. There's 58 Formula Vs have entered, so they're going to have not just the main races, they're going to have heats and repecharges and all sorts of things to sort out the fields for their finals. A big field. It's the final national round of the Formula Fords, the National Formula Ford Series. That's going to run also, I think, their biggest field so far. About 30 sports sedans for the Ramada Resort Phillip Island 50k plate. So, so it's going to be. It's always a great meeting, as we say. Every year it is schoolies for petrol heads. It's the end of term party. We all turn up. The weather's usually good. We're heading into Christmas. It's time to say that's it. We're packing the stuff away. Although this year we're not. I can sort of say now it hasn't been officially announced yet, but at this stage it's looking more likely that In Pit Lane and RMO TV will be streaming live the final of the Australasian Formula SAE titles from Calder Park in the second weekend of December. We're putting that together at the moment, so Formula SAE is always one of our highlights as well. So we've still got lots and lots of motorsport to come. Michael, you got a plug for what's happening with Box of Neutrals this weekend?
Yeah, this Friday at 3:30 Eastern Time, we'll be reviewing the Brazilian Grand Prix, deciding whether or not double points is worthwhile. It isn't, so I don't. It's a moot question. And also, I'll be asking on the Raw on Friday, Jensen Button, assuming he hasn't been sacked already by that point, which will make it all rather redundant. Should he be retained or not? Money not being an object, because it is one of those big driver issues that Formula One hasn't faced perhaps in a little while, to sack a world champion in lieu of someone who's a whole lot cheaper, essentially.
Yeah, as I said on the show tonight, which once again nobody saw, he's showing time and time again he's a very smart driver, he's a very good driver, he's got lots of experience, and I think he'd be an absolute asset to be alongside Alonso, and as you say, especially with his experience dealing with people, because I'm sure there's still people associated with Honda Motorsport that he would have dealt with years ago, and he's also got that sort of tenuous Japanese connection with his girlfriend and all that. So I think he'd be an absolute asset. But as you say, it's Formula One and money rules. Money rules also on this program, and I've put enough coins in the machine now, so I think we're just about to run out of steam. So once again, Trent Price from eRacer magazine. Trent, a quick plug for eRacer.
Yeah. Go to www.e-racing.com or just follow us on Twitter, eRacingMag. You can find us there. And
as we said, Box of Neutrals coming up this Friday afternoon. on ABC Grandstand. It's on digital, it's online, it's on podcasts. You can pick it up behind the shelter shed at school. It's absolutely everywhere. It's like Chicken Man. It's everywhere, it's everywhere. We will be everywhere, hopefully next week, 10 o'clock on Channel 31, and hopefully in the right order and with all the right sponsorship announcements, and who knows. But right now, the voice is going. I'm getting very tired. It's been a long day. Hello to everybody else who was stuck on the Monash today for how many hours before we all eventually got home. It's been an interesting day, and also a frustrating day as well when you go to the effort of getting the damn show in there, staying up until 2 in the morning to cut the damn thing together, and then sort of they don't play it. But we will have this argument with them tomorrow. But until then, from all of us here on In Pit Lane, the Victory Lap, until next week, from all of us, bye for now.